Welcome! We are so glad you are here. We really are. Before we begin our celebration, I want to start by taking a few moments to express our gratitude to the land we are inhabiting right now and to honor our Indigenous peoples. To do this, we have invited Joe Brem, who is the Chief Program Officer from Rural Action, to deliver a land acknowledgement.
Yeah, let's get my face out of there. Thank you, Dr. Maroney, and thank you to the committee for making some time right up front here for the land. Wisdom sits in places, according to Ruth and Dudley Patterson, members of the Western Apache tribe featured in Keith Basso's ethnography bearing the same name. Basso, a lifelong friend and collaborator of the tribe, explains that in the Western Apache language, this phrase, wisdom sits in places, uses the word place like a hard container that holds something, like a gourd holding water. Places hold wisdom, they tell us, and we need to visit them to drink it. When I visit the big shellbark hickory tree on my neighbor's farm, for example, I think about the thousands of years old village down the road along Sunday Creek, where archaeologists found remains of heaps of hard-shelled nuts. I can visualize the people there long ago, cracking hickory nuts, and know a little bit about how they lived. Living so closely with the land and depending on it for everything, they must have loved the land more than I can fathom. Their stories, their identities, their culture, all tied to these old hills and plants and animals that they support. Standing beneath the big hickory, I can taste but a crumb of the grief felt by these people when they were torn unjustly from their homeland and forced to march across the Great Plains in the dead of winter. And standing under the big hickory, I can think about one of the tribes forced violently from this land, the Shawnee people now in Oklahoma, and know that acknowledging what happened here is not enough. Some kind of action is called for to heal these wounds. And this is a small thing, but one thing that I can do, that many of us can do, is to make a monthly donation to the Shawnee Tribe Cultural Center, which preserves and shares the tribe's history, art, culture, and stories that connect to that land and this one. And if you're not in a position to donate, I'd start with a great book called Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States. So I want to tell you just quickly about a few more places you can visit around here to drink up some wisdom. A place called Monroe Outlook near Corning. You can look out across what is now a sea of forests. It's a good place to consider that perhaps the same greed that inspired the mistreatment of indigenous people also fueled the mistreatment of the land itself. Logged clean of its timber over and over again, ripped open with shovels the size of a school bus for coal, mined deep for its coal, which powered the growth of our nation and built lasting wealth that swiftly departed the land, leaving behind acid mine drainage and black lung, leaving behind creeks that would be devoid of life forever without intervention. From this rare scenic perch at Monroe, you can also see that the forests have returned with amazing resiliency and diversity. Looking out over the wrinkles of the land, you can think about all this and become wise, as the Pattersons say. You can travel a short distance from the Outlook and come to Renville, where black and white coal miners were paid equal wages and had equal rights long before the civil rights movement. And in a moment where we badly need racial justice, places like this and the people who grew up there offer some seeds of wisdom. And one of our own professors, Franz Doppen, works with the Renville Historic Preservation Society on keeping the remaining buildings there and working to preserve its stories. In And traveling a little further west, you'll leave the Sunday Creek watershed and travel forward in time into the Monday Creek watershed to a town called New Straitsville. And you can sit under a sandstone rock overhang called Robinson's Cave and think about the Hocking Valley coal miners who met there in secret and formed what became the United Mine Workers Union. And thanks to amazing local self-taught historians like Cheryl Blosser and John Winenberg, who share this story and many others like it, it's possible to sit there and imagine the real people and the terrible mining conditions they were risking their lives to change. And not far from that cave, you can hop on the Buckeye Trail and walk through mature mixed mesophytic forests where wood thrush song drifts across the back of air-breathing land snails. You could admire mature oaks, sugar maples, smooth gray beeches, and the 1,300 species of moths that they feed. In closing, I think of hearing John Trudell speak, a brilliant indigenous leader back in 2003, and he told the crowd that, quote, "We are shapes of the earth, all of us, no matter our heritage or backgrounds." You know, simply acknowledging the land probably takes several human generations. The forests here change on a longer timeline than what we're given. You know, it reminds me of the quote, "Mountains move, but not in our time." But following the lead of John Trudell, what we can acknowledge at least is that we are inseparable from the land. We are the morel mushrooms we eat, the nettles we drink for tea, the golden seal we use for medicine. Our bones are basically limestone rearranged. And the sycamores delight in their own way, barefoot children leaping off their sturdy roots and into the pale blue creek pools they create. They have for thousands of years here. So in closing, let us remember, as Keith Basso reminds us, that sense of place is not only something we know and feel, it is something we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Michelle Maroney, and I'm the conference host this year. And I really am very happy that you are here at the 46th Annual Appalachian Studies Association Conference, and the first one ever here in Athens, Ohio. We've been planning this conference for almost, yeah, that's a good reason to applaud. We have been planning this conference for almost 5 years, and when we decided on the theme for this conference in 2021, from surviving to thriving, we could not have foreseen what would have happened between now and then to make this theme all the more relevant. As many of you know, when I was president of ASA, we had to cancel the conference in 2020 at University of Kentucky with less than 2 weeks until it kicked off. I want to make sure that we offer UK our gratitude. They planned an amazing conference in 2020, and it was truly traumatic to all of us to have to cancel. Many people worked to plan that conference, but I want to especially offer gratitude to Catherine Newfont and Jennifer Kramer. If you're here, please stand so people can acknowledge you individually. I know Catherine is here. There she is. And Catherine Engel, too. Catherine Engel, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much from University of Kentucky. In 2021, Ohio University and the ASA office collaborated with many others to host the first ever virtual conference. And we were all really nervous about how it might work, but everyone who attended and presented at that conference really stepped it up, learning how to maneuver teams, making incredible presentations, and even engaging in virtual discussions. Moving into last year's conference at WVU, who had agreed to host back in 2020, I think many of us were wondering and worrying if people would come. Once the conference started, we knew we really had nothing to worry about, as more than 600 people came back to ASA. Again, there were many people involved in that conference, but let's offer special gratitude to Natalie Sippolt. I know you're here. Natalie, can you stand up so everyone can recognize you? Thank you for being here. We are truly grateful to all of our sponsors and partners this year. You will see our poster with the sponsors and partners throughout the conference. You'll see them in the program. You'll see them online. These are organizations or individuals who have provided financial support. In addition, we have dozens of partners who have offered their services, space, or expertise to make this conference unique. Our partners are also listed in the program and online. There are so many people to thank, but I need to identify some people who were essential to making this conference happen. First, Dr. Tiffany Arnold. Please stand up. She is this year's program chair, and it's truly been amazing to watch her take every good idea and some bad ideas and actually turn them into an activity or a session to implement. If you do not thank anyone else while you are here, please thank Tiffany for her work on this conference. Others who were instrumental are Patty Malloy. I don't think Patty is here. She is our logistics coordinator and made sure we had parking, vans for field trips, poster signage, and 1,000 other things. And then there's just a couple of other people I want to recognize. Rebecca Robinson Miller and Janine Mick. If you're here, could you stand up? Who coordinated the Health and Wellness Fair. Rachel Turman, who coordinated the Authors Plenary. That's really going to be exciting on Saturday. Mary Nally, who has organized the pop-up music and helped with the Black American History Tour. Jennifer Harvey, who coordinated, she's from the library, and she coordinated and sponsored all of the events in the library, including the publisher's reception and the newcomer's reception. And Nikki Ohms, if you're in the room, she has been our campus events service coordinator. So it's just an amazing, and there are so many other people, really, that I feel nervous about just calling out these people because I'm afraid I'll miss somebody important, but please, thank you. So I also want to find out, since we're here and it's 2023, we have almost 900 people registered for the conference. Some of you may have missed the past few years, some of you have never attended a conference before, and some of you are regulars that have never missed a conference. So if you've attended 10 or more ASA conferences, please stand up. 10 or more, 10 or more. All right. So all you people here for the first time, seek these people out and connect with them. Appalachia Fest is really an opportunity to celebrate the region and to highlight Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. And here to welcome you on behalf of the city is Mayor Steve Patterson. When I invited Mayor Patterson to make some remarks, he responded enthusiastically to come. So please welcome Athens Mayor Steve Patterson.
Welcome! I think enthusiastic was an understatement. I was probably jumping up and down. You know, ask me to do something like this and I'm all over it. Welcome. Welcome to Athens. And as you can see, as Patty Mitchell puts it, we're the city of puppets. We are the city of change makers. We are the city of creative thinkers, much like all of you. So again, I really want to thank you. As I was looking at your program, you guys have a whole lot of fun in store for what you're going to be doing while you're here. And when I heard 900 coming, you know, I even hate to say the word, but post-pandemic, you know, the years that we all loathe, is quite a statement that you're all here. So I really encourage you while you're here, engage, stay engaged, learn, explore. Go see what Athens County has to offer, because I would contend, and there's no bias here, this is the most beautiful city and county in Appalachia. I told you I was biased. I also want to point out a couple people, or make note of a couple people. Where's Molly? Molly from Reimagine Appalachia. Reimagine Appalachia is really twisting and shaking and turning things upside down when it comes to sustainability and looking at the opportunity that is right in front of us. It's right in front of us for us taking the lead. Appalachia needs to take the lead for alternative energies, for making sure that we are out there doing the right things to protect the environment that, again, I am biased here. Appalachia is the most beautiful part of the United States of America. Absolutely the most beautiful, the most wild, yet gorgeous topography you will find anywhere, and I have been all over the United States. I'm missing Vermont, I think, and Maine. I'll go there someday. So I've seen a whole lot. I also, so if you're not familiar with Reimagine Appalachia, Google it. Figure out what they're doing. They are, again, taking kind of, in my mind's eye, taking the Marshall Plan and flipping the Marshall Plan on its head and saying, you know what, it's time to reinvest in Appalachia to where we have the resources needed to do the work that needs to be done to save our planet. I know that you guys are all, one of your major tenets is sustainability. Challenge yourselves. We need to challenge ourselves. All right? I also want to point out a dear, dear friend of mine who's sitting in the back, Carrie Gunther Seymour, who's here with us. Carrie was the city's second poet laureate, but more importantly, she has the dubious distinction of being the only state poet laureate that has served twice in a row because of the pandemic. But because you're amazing, Carrie. If you want to read poems that speak to your heart about what Appalachia is all about, read Carrie Gunther Seymour's work. Read her work. I'm not going to go on any further. I could slip into professor mode, and you don't want that. But again, I'm going to push you to explore. Look at what Athens and Athens County has to offer. Enjoy, learn, and I'll tell you what, my office is just up the street at 8 East Washington Street. If you so desire, please stop and see me and visit with me and understand how we are doing things. We're actually breaking ground on a 2.5 megawatt solar array that's going to completely power my wastewater treatment plant, my community center, and our seasonal swimming pool to get ourselves off of coal-fired energy. I'm done. I am done. Our city is done. We're the first city, I think, in the United States to have a community choice carbon fee that the citizens of Athens voted for by 76% to say, yeah, take 0.2 cents of add that to my utility bill to go into city solar projects. There's something you can take home with you and see if you can deploy it, because that's one of many tools that I think we all need to work on to flip the narrative when it comes to renewables and sustainability. Enjoy yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Now I would like to introduce Dr. John McCarthy, the Dean of the College of Health Sciences and Professions. CHSP has been the most supportive academic unit on campus for this conference, providing both financial and in-kind support for the past 4+ years. We appreciate Dean McCarthy and our former Dean, Randy Leidy, their unwavering commitment to working in Appalachia and for providing a home for Appalachian studies at Ohio University. Dean McCarthy.
Thanks very much, Michelle. One thing I did notice in terms of thanks was that Michelle certainly wasn't going to thank herself, and that was probably appropriate. But I would like to thank Michelle very much for her work. I'd certainly call out to the rest of my faculty here. Janine, I saw you, and Caroline also. Nice to see some past and present people, Rebecca, and then certainly Tiffany, as Michelle already mentioned. I'd certainly like to welcome you to the 46th annual Appalachian Studies Conference, and I'm thrilled to have it at Ohio University. I came to Athens, Ohio in 2004, and I came from Center County, Pennsylvania, which is also a fine area in Appalachia, Mayor Patterson. But when I came from that region, there were actually a lot of things that felt pretty familiar to me. One was I had access to amazing hiking and outdoor activities. I had that in Pennsylvania, and then I had it again here. And it was always fascinating to me how I could go 5 minutes from wherever I was living at the time and be transported into an area where I could feel some real solace and connection with nature. And whether it was a ridge in Pennsylvania or a ridge right outside of Athens, where I could hike over it and then see an amazing lake, it was always a period that gave me a lot of strength no matter what was going on in my life. As the slide indicates here, my work professionally was as a speech and language therapist. And I work with children with multiple disabilities. In Center County, Pennsylvania, one of the things I learned was that it was challenging to access services. I'd love to be able to say I came here and everyone was immediately connected with all the specialty care they needed, and no one had problems with access to health care or transportation or affordability. But those problems do persist, and they're ones that I think a university has an obligation to be a part of finding the solution to. In working with children and families and with people with multiple disabilities who can't talk, so lots of reasons why you might not be able to talk, one of the incredible honors I've had in my professional life, and it was presented to me in graduate school, was all you have to do is find out everything that person could say if they could talk, and then make sure they have access to that. And it was an incredible challenge that I've always enjoyed the work of throughout my professional career. But what it's meant to me is that I have to understand people's lives. So when I'm working with older adults, maybe someone who had a stroke or traumatic brain injury, I get to find out who's important to this person. What do they want to talk about? Where do they go? What ways do they have of communicating? And with children, it's even more significant because I have to say, well, not only do they have the things that are interesting to them right now, but what are the things in the future that are of interest? Right up the road in Worcester, Ohio, there's the Prinky Romick Company, and they've been a great partner to me in designing computer interfaces for people who can't talk. The partnerships that I found in this region have been truly inspiring. The people and families that I've worked with are amazing in the work that we have to do. That was true in Pennsylvania too, but I've really found a very welcoming community here. And I've learned quite a bit about the way people say things here that's maybe a little different than they do in Pennsylvania. So I always have to try to capture that anytime I'm working on communication solutions. Learning about cultures through the way they talk and the way they communicate, the language they use, is a fascinating window. One of the other ways, though, speaking of communication, is through the arts. I'm thrilled to be surrounded by so many great pieces of art here. But I found art through my professional career to be one of the most welcoming ways that you can bring people together. There's something equalizing about communication through arts, no matter what the medium is. And I'm happy that it's a part of the conference today because I think it's such an invaluable way for us all to communicate. Let me end by saying, Michelle, I hope that you'll visit the Health and Wellness Expo to see some of the ways that the college and our amazing partners in this area are working together to support not only surviving but thriving in this region. Thank you very much.
Okay, so just before we move into our featured partner, just a few important announcements. Tomorrow and Friday and Saturday, the Atrium Cafe in Grover Center, which is where most of the concurrent sessions will be open to grab coffee, a snack, or a sandwich. There will be morning and afternoon snack breaks. They've all been outside of Baker Center where the registration in. They're all sponsored. We don't have enough money for 900 people for snacks, so please don't be disappointed if we run out. We had a budget. The afternoon snack break on Saturday will be a celebration of the Appalachian Journal's 50 years, and there will be cake, all right? All right. And if you haven't heard, I'm going to tell you again, after the opening ceremony, we're inviting you to continue the party at the West End Distillery with the steering committee and the West End Cider House with their signature cocktail. It is walkable from here. If you want to cut your walk in half, I have a slide that shows you there's some university parking lots where you can move your car and be a little closer. It's about a 20-minute walk. Now there's something I just want to bring up that I hadn't planned to bring up, and I actually have it written here in marker because I hadn't planned to do it. But this is personal to me as a parent of a trans child. Some of you may be aware that there's a business that has taken a very visible stance against trans rights in our community. Please know that they do not represent the Athens community or this conference. Although many neighboring businesses, you won't be able to miss this business, by the way, but many neighboring businesses have visually opposed their stance, and we support those businesses. So I just want you to know that we're aware of what you may see when you go uptown. And please know that they do not represent this conference. So now, to lead us in an explanation of all these decorations and puppets that you're experiencing, I want to welcome Dean Scott Titsworth from OU College, Scripps College of Communication. We're grateful for your presence, Dean Titsworth, and for your college's sponsorship of the opening ceremonies. That means they paid for the food, y'all. That's what, all right? And Scott will introduce our featured partner, PassionWorks.
I'd like to join with Mayor Patterson in welcoming you to Athens, Ohio. I won't go as far as he did because I'm a communication person. I don't want to alienate my audience. But I will echo with Steve that I've lived in Appalachia now for 20 plus years. This has become home for my family and I and several dogs along the way. I agree with him wholeheartedly that not just Athens, but this region is the most fulfilling, the most beautiful region that I've ever lived in. And I know that it has not only given me comfort living here because I feel connected to the place now, but I also know that my family has thrived here. And it's because of the people that are here that has allowed that to happen. I feel grateful and blessed for that every moment that I'm able to, be in front of a group like this, but also when I'm walking down the street waving at people. So I just want to say that. I also want to thank Michelle for the invitation to be able to sponsor this. It might sound odd that paying for all this food is something that I would relish, but the reason that I do is because I feel deeply connected to what it is that this conference is trying to accomplish today, but also through its history. As I said, I've lived in Appalachia now for 20 years. I grew up in southeast Kansas, which is obviously not connected to our region at all, but I will tell you that the town that I grew up in and the region that I grew up in Kansas also had a legacy of strip mining. Also had a legacy of immigrants that were working in those mines to extract those resources from the earth and leave behind for years, decades and decades, nothing more than holes. I also know that when I go back there to visit, those holes are now wonderful places to camp and fish. And so I know that the resiliency that I experienced growing up is the same resiliency that I see here in Southeast Ohio. The other reason why I am so excited about being a part of this conference is that my daughter, who is graduating from OU this coming spring, or this semester, her first academic presentation was at this conference when it was hosted in Morgantown right before the pandemic. And this is something that, because of the pandemic, has stuck with her as being something that has driven and propelled her to continue doing research. And so, as a proud father of a bobcat, I'm very thankful for the fact that it was this type of an intimate conference that Emma was able to see, besides looking through the lens of her mother and father, what academic presentations are all about, and to gain that confidence. I'm very excited about that. The other thing I really like about the theme of this conference, which is, as you know, from surviving to thriving, that has special meaning to me as it relates to Athens and Southeast Ohio. Obviously, from my perspective, I feel fulfilled living here, but I also know that the reason why I feel fulfilled is because of the connections that I've made outside of the OU campus, which all of you that live in college towns, you know that that's a bubble, right? Outside of the campus, going just a few miles down the road to Albany or a few miles up the road to the Plains or to many of the communities that Joe talked about, you get to meet people that have had generations that have lived in Southeast Ohio and in those towns. And when you meet those individuals, you come to realize that despite the polarization that is so apparent in our national political discourse, and I will admit our local political discourse, unfortunately, despite all of that, the connections that you make with people are durable. They allow for the promise of relationships to rise above the polarization, right? And that's something that I've experienced over and over again as I've been able to participate in youth athletics with my daughter, to be able to do things in the community where I'm able to meet individuals. And so that idea that we are able to thrive is something that I would contend is directly tied to the bonds that we make between people and communities. And that's why I think that this theme is so important. The Scripps College of Communication, I want to talk about just for a few moments, because I think that what I've tried to do as dean, but it certainly preceded me, is that the Scripps College has a deep connection to the community in which we're a part of, and it goes beyond just the Athens community. The majors in my college, which cover all aspects of communication, we actively recruit students from Appalachian, Ohio, and surrounding states to be a part of our majors, and I will say that we are one of the top communication programs in the country. The reason we think this is so important to recruit students from Southeast Ohio and neighboring Appalachian states is because in the new economy that's based around digital creativity, you have the ability to gain digital skills in our majors, go back to your home, live there, and be able to thrive in your community, having the ability to take jobs remotely that would have never been part of your portfolio before, right? So what I'm labeling this as we look forward in the college is that we have a Success at Home initiative where we can give students that grew up in our Appalachian towns, no matter how small that they are, if they can get the access to the broadband, which we know is still a critical lack of resource in our area, they can gain access to the economy that is driving the country, and the world for that matter. The other way that my college connects to Appalachian, Ohio is through WOUB Public Media. WOUB serves 55 counties in 3 states, Ohio, Kentucky, and West Virginia. And of course, through their over-the-air broadcasting, they provide educational content and other information for students and families and educators. And especially during the pandemic, we were deeply committed to giving families an option for their students to be able to continue attaining educational support, even though they were not able to physically be together in many of their classrooms. What you may not know about WOUB is that in addition to their over-the-air broadcasting, they also have outreach programs where they actively work with pre-K-12 teachers in Southeast Ohio to provide educational content to bolster what the teachers are doing in their classroom. Through those initiatives, we've been able to reach over 500 educators and all of the students that are associated with those educators to enrich what's going on in the classrooms, and that has had an impact not only in the state of Ohio, but in neighboring counties, neighboring states as well. In addition to that, WOUB also produces Appalachian-centric content. And so over the course of the last 12 years, We've produced multiple documentaries documenting the history and traditions of local communities like Marietta, Athens, Chillicothe, and that list goes on and on. Those resources serve those communities by allowing multiple generations now going into the future to understand how those communities grew up and how they have thrived through the ebb and flow of what's happened over the course of hundreds of years in Southeast Ohio. I would also be remiss not to mention the fact that WOUB, I think, is the source of news and information in Southeast Ohio. And one of the ways that we serve this region is by doing sports programming around high school football and basketball through Gridiron Glory and Hardwood Heroes, both of which are award-winning programs. But the way that it creates a sense of community for those school districts is something that you really don't witness in rural areas like this, but for the commitment of our students and also the staff at WOUB. So with those brief stories, I hope that what you come to understand is that in my college, in the Scripps College, but I would say the exact same thing is true for John's College as well as the other colleges at Ohio University, we care deeply about our community and we want to form those durable bonds between us and the community where they can enrich our students' experiences while at the same time we can give back to those partners. And that's what brings me to being able to have the honor of introducing Patty Mitchell and the Passion Works Studio as the keynote presenter in this afternoon's presentation. So I want to tell a very quick story about how I met Patty for the first time. So my wife and I, right after moving to Athens, were eating in Casa Nueva, which only in Athens and Appalachian can you find hippie Mexican food, but that's where it's at if you want to find it. We were eating in there one afternoon for lunch, and there was this amazing artwork that had been placed up on the wall. Looked very similar to what I'm being surrounded by up here. And we were immediately drawn to it. It's not something we expected. We asked the server at Casa, what is this artwork? And the server started to explain that the art was created by Passion Works Studio, and then that server did a very good job of going on to talk about what the mission of Passion Works was. And I will admit, I was there for the enchiladas at the moment, but my wife, who is also a professor in the college, immediately said, I've got to meet this Patty Mitchell person. That has created a family friend of 20 years that we've been through so much together, both professionally and personally, that I just can't imagine what it would be like if we were ever separated. She's become a part of our family, and for that I'm eternally grateful. There's several words that I would use to describe Patty. So one word or phrase that I would use to describe her is the phrase positive deviant. Deviant's not usually a good word, but remember it's positive deviant, right? What does that mean? A colleague of mine, Arvind Singhal, who taught here at OU about 15 years ago, but we've remained in contact, his line of research actually explores this concept of positive deviance. And what he means by that is that there are individuals that you find in remarkable situations where they have done something radically different for the good of others, right? And they found ways to overcome barriers so that others can benefit because of their radical ideas. And they've made those ideas work. Through positive deviance, you can not only achieve significant change for particular individuals, but for entire communities and cultures, right? I think Patty is one of those positive deviants. Why is that? Well, historically, if you understand the ways that programming for people with different abilities has been conducted, one of which is the asylum that is up on the hill here just outside of the Ohio University campus, or technically part of our campus. That was one way that it was confronted, but also many of the programs that were designed and designated to serve people with different abilities were really focused on a medicalization of them, where they tried to say, we're going to cure you because you are not normal, right? Or we're going to adapt so that your non-normality can be addressed. That is not the way that Passionworks Studio and Patty Mitchell has tried to approach the way that they work with artists with different abilities. In fact, Patty is religious in her commitment to trying to change the way that we think about individuals, so that rather than saying that some individuals are quote unquote normal and other individuals are not normal, that we start to think about the importance and the assets of difference that all of us have. And that's something that's been her passion as she created the studio, and also has worked so hard to serve the people in Southeast Ohio and Athens in terms of not only enriching our community through this type of art, but also enriching all the individuals that walk into that studio on a daily basis. Patty also, I would call her an innovator. So she got her degree at Ohio University, and around 1998, she started the studio, which at that time was housed in a government-based sheltered workshop. However, in 2018, Patty was able to take the studio out of that government-based workshop, form it into a nonprofit entity in Athens, Ohio that has its own storefront. And through her innovation, she was able to create product lines that has resulted in over $3 million in sales since its start, and the sale of more than 35,000 of the flowers that you see centered on the tables right now. That's innovation in Southeast Ohio that I think is exciting, that I think is transformative, and also demonstrates the grit that it takes for an individual to be able to pull that off. Finally, I would describe Patty as being a collaborator. Everything that Passionworks has done has been in collaboration with other entities in Athens, other entities across the globe, and certainly Ohio University. The number of students that have attended Ohio University that have stepped into the studio doors of Passionworks Studios and have found their lives changed is unimaginable. And for that, Ohio University owes Patty and the studio a significant debt of gratitude, because she has truly allowed our students to be enriched. With respect to the Scripps College, one of those collaborations that's happened is what we call the Turn It Gold Initiative. Every September, we honor the Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, right? And over the course of the last 9 years, Patty has partnered with my college, Intercollegiate Athletics, so the Bobcats, and other units at Ohio University to raise awareness about childhood cancer in ways that has impacts not only in Athens, but also across the country. To date, we have been able to serve literally over 10,000 students that have participated in Turn It Gold activities over the course of multiple years that are from Ohio University and work in some way with the Turn It Gold initiative. We've been able to raise over $35,000 in product sales that are specially designated as Turn It Gold products, all of which those dollars are put back into either research on cancer mitigation and also the importance of mitigating the effects of treatment for children that have cancer. And also, we've been able to raise significant amounts of money for local families who are impacted by cancer among their families and their children. And that's something that, as I look at it, I feel like the college, the studio, the university, and our other community partners that includes businesses and others, that's that example of durable bonds that I talked about at the beginning of this welcome. Those durable bonds have impacted individual families, they've impacted our community, they've impacted our students, and they're even impacting on a national scale the way that we think about childhood cancer in relation to other types of cancer. That's something that I think is important and exciting, and it wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the fact that we have that type of bonding that takes place between individuals, but also organizations. So all of those things that I just said about Patty, I think shows why Passionworks generally, and Patty Mitchell specifically, is a prime example of an Appalachian person and an Appalachian organization that has found ways to thrive, which is, of course, what we're going to learn about through the rest of this conference. So it gives me great pride to welcome Patty Mitchell to the stage so that you too can hear the story of Passionworks Studio.
Yikes. That was pretty good. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, because I'll just keep talking. Oh my gosh. Push the bar. Got it. Cider house later. So, welcome to Athens. So happy to have you here. And we just love to share our stories and our culture and our place. And it's a place that, you know, when my relatives, my family was here for years and then moved to the East Coast, came back. So I have legs in two places. And whenever they come, they're like, man, the people here really love this town. Like, yes, we do. And I feel so lucky to live in a space where we can basically build the community in which we want to live. And that's the way we feel about where we are. When my parents were here, my dad worked at McBee and my mom worked at Sheltering Arms. And they had two children here. They came with my brother and had two children. And one, they both had disabilities. And one died early, very, just a few days because there was only one incubator and he was premature. So due to institutional problems, my brother didn't survive. The other was institutionalized until he was 12, and I was 10 when he died. And I promised that I would live for the both of us. So since my inception as a being, I was aware of institutional culture, and it was a mystery. He was away. And so I've always dreamt about what this away meant and where it is. And so here in Athens, Ohio, when my dad we were living outside DC, and he's like, you know, I think you'd like Athens. I was like, well, let's go. So I literally stepped out of the Ford Torino station wagon and committed to living here the rest of my life. I just felt it. And so the work of Passion Works is my gift to my brother and my family, but also to myself, because this is what I dreamt of. And this town has embraced this idea and has celebrated with me and with each other to be able to make this happen. So what Passion Works is a collaborative community space where we get to be, and I say this with due respect, we fart around with intention. And we build and dream and talk, and it was artist built, artist maintained. We're not in the business of changing anyone. We're just in the business of creating the best environment for each and every person who comes in the door to thrive. And we do that by paying attention to what people can do, what they want to do, what they would like to try to do. And then we collaborate together to bring all those parts and pieces together to see what we can build. When it first started at a sheltered workshop, and a sheltered workshop is a work environment for people with developmental differences, and here in Athens County it was capping pens. And so the major job opportunity was capping pens, and if you have cerebral palsy, that's a really hard job. It's a job that doesn't necessarily align with your body or your spirit, and that's just a design issue. That's all that is. If we can use our imaginations to imagine better, then we can do better. So here, when I first started, one of the first people I worked with was a huge guy, big. And I was like, oh, dude, you know, I don't know, and he didn't have he didn't speak, he was completely deaf. And I was like, what am I, Patty Mitchell, gonna offer this guy? Like, I'm a photographer. Right? But I want it, and he wrote, we were doing a little ceramic project, and he wrote on this tile, to who I am writing, there is a strength between our heart. I just looked at him, and he just patted me on the back as I was crying. Just thinking about it brings me back. And he taught me so much not to project onto another and limit anybody else's opportunity to what my limitations are, if through my experience. So this has been a journey of experimentation and discovery and so much beauty and love. I hope I can transport you into the way the studio feels and what we do. We are committed to low-tech, high magic. We use what we have, and we transform it into new things, cardboard, paint, plastic, whatever is around us, and imagine differently. Typical programs or sheltered workshops is a factory style. I love production. I love making stuff, right? But what are you making and why? And what we thought of was, well, let's just see what happens if we put an art studio in the back of one of these spaces. Will people want to make stuff? And the answer is yes. So we're so lucky and amazing. We just attracted just loving, gorgeous makers. Wendy Miner, who is working with Marty in this, she has been with the studio for 25 years. She was the first artist in residence, like, you know, there I am, I'm like running around like crazy, and then this woman comes in. She was the first, she's still there. Just absolutely, absolutely glorious. And we just started building and making and doing together. Today, the studio is not on the outskirts of town. We're not invisible. We are not in the corner, as you know, baby will not be left in the corner. Dirty Dancing representative. And we are uptown. We are uptown, right behind the gas station. So as you're wandering around, you'll see the gas station. You'll be, oh, we can go to Passion Works. It's right behind there. And it is not an accident. We want to be bold and loud and bright and beautiful so that we can be seen. Because in too many communities, people with differences are out of sight, and then that becomes out of mind. And we miss too much when that is the reality. So we are right uptown, and we open the space to people to come in and make and be together. And what's so beautiful is being near the university, we have such a collaboration and a shared heart for learning by doing. And experiential learning is what really sticks with people. I believe that. That's how I was learning as a student, and I wanted to be able to create a space for other students to have like experiences. So we are very aware and we are protective of the creative spirit. We see that as a little green little sprout, and we just want to engage and be with each other and to just bring that into being. So we recognize that connection, purpose, and belonging is what we need to thrive, and we can only be creative to our best abilities when we are in a place of trust and safety and love. We work through love. Our decision-making, our choices, the way we speak to each other is through that lens. So we look for solutions, not for problems, right? So if you're somebody with a developmental difference, you might get a lot of attention for what is the problem. No, right? So what do you like to do? This is David Dewey, awesome guy. He has hands that are in this position, and his job match was putting pen caps on pens or folding paper and stuffing envelopes. It's not a great match. But the dude can hold a pen. Unbelievable. So talented. And he came in, he didn't know he could draw. He's coming in. Next thing I know, he's wearing a beret, changing his name to Pepe Ledoux. He's the artist, right? Transformed us. His beautiful drawings became the first designs for our product line. Here we have Tom Depew and Lynn Harder, Scott's lovely partner, and Tom can move his hand like this. Go Tom, you're doing it. And I was putting paintbrushes in his hand and wrapping them and doing all these things, and then we started working with engineers, and they followed his body movement and put the pen on top of his hand. Genius. And it just like, I was like, oh my God. And so now we've replicated that approach with garden gloves, Velcro, and Sharpies across the country and internationally. That one breakthrough broke through for many, 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 many other people. So we look for what works, right? It could be a potato. This one woman's holding a potato, has a little bit of cerebral palsy going, and I know if you put a weight band on somebody's hand, that resistance might be enough so that person can have more control over their muscles. And in this situation, I had a potato, and the brush could go at any angle when you have a potato. Just a tip, take it with you. And then we can become a little, more sophisticated after that. But that's where we start. And we start because it matters. This is the first time in this woman's life of 32 years she ever painted. And it wasn't because she didn't want to, it was because she didn't have access. And all it took was a funny hat, some yarn, a stick, and the determination to see, you want to? Let's do it. How are we going to do it? I don't know. And then you just figure it out. And by doing that, you break open people's spirit and their hearts and their entrance into community. Because if we're seen as the other and we're only there as a person viewing other people as audience member, that's not a life fully lived. And we want to live big. And so this is the story of the flower that's at every table in this room. This is Carolyn Williams, the beautiful Carolyn Williams, who was absolutely enamored with flowers. And she would draw flowers anywhere she was invited to. When we were at the Sheltered Workshop, someone brought in a stack of printing plates from the newspaper. And we got them, cleaned them, and we started painting on them. And again, this is when upcycling wasn't as cool as it is now. We grew into being cool because we used what we had. We hardly had any funding whatsoever. And we were just painting. And then we learned that we could make petal shapes and patterns out of Carolyn's drawings, and that we could cut the metal with scissors. So we started cutting it, and then we started building flowers. And these flowers have become part of the fabric of our community. They are invited to 35,000 flowers is a lot, with an average of 17 petals per flower. Just do the math. We started by cutting them by hand, and we are just always so thrilled when we see them just part of where we celebrate. From birth gifts to weddings to funerals, flowers, these flowers are involved. And David and Serena are still making these flowers, and we love making them because each one is new and different. So the design was to respond to the worker and not the worker to contort themselves to the job. And that's what I see as the new Appalachia, is that we can build the space and the jobs and the things that fit our spirit. So it's not an extractive experience. We're going to build and send out, but not be taken from. And yeah, right? Why not? And so working with people who in some places, in some corners, are seen as non-viable citizens, we are so hyper-productive. I am so exhausted sometimes because it is just, we make a lot of stuff, and we have a lot of products, and we do a lot of things. And it's because we like it and to prove a point. That do not dismiss your artists in your community. Those are the folks who are looking for solutions. Because our little shop, which used to be the Greyhound bus station uptown, is a place that attracts people to visit our area, and we use it as a training center. So if you want this in your community, we will help you. We have books, we have PBS special, we have any medium so that we can get this to you. We'll travel to your city. And we are just worker bees. This is our consulting group. We travel nationally and internationally to share what was built in Appalachia. If you learn about Athens at all, sometimes you may have heard about our Halloween. I love it. I think it's so great. Since 1972, there has been this party uptown that has been tried to be squished and smalled and bloop, the dirt, and it's like this won't go away. Why should it? Let's love it into its next generation. And this is where the puppets and the things that you see here grew out of. And what we do is we have a pop-up studio, and we work with university students and community to build the community in which we want to live. So we build the puppets and the costumes out of upcycled materials, cardboard, paper, and we just design and make memories. So here's Nina with her drawing of a butterfly turned into a giant puppet. That's magic. And that's paper mache. That's just stuff that's sitting around that you imagine differently, low-tech, high magic. And the parade really represents, I think, the spirit of Athens. And we have dedicated ourselves to make visible the spirit of Athens, Ohio. That we can build big and we can build beautifully. And so one of the things is, you met our mayor, so here we have the Honey for the Heart. So we call this parade Honey for the Heart because we had a visiting artist from South America, and she called Athens Honey for her heart. She loved it here. So we just said, hey, and there's our mayor with the Athens Halloween banner in his office. Yay, Steve. And look at our visitor's guide. So now our visitors group, I mean, Boone and Joel must be here, they're representing our town by the work that our artists are doing. I love that. And then the puppets go out just for the fun of it. This is Valentine's Day. And the Turn It Gold. And the murals around town. You'll see us. Go find them. Larry's Doghouse, you'll love it. And this is, I'm just so grateful, 20 East State Street. And look us up, like us on the stuff, and I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
Patty, what are your hours for the next couple of days?
Hours are from 10 to 6, Monday through Saturday.
Okay, so visit the shop. That'd be great. Thank you so much. Oh, okay. So the visitor's guide, if you have not stopped yet, as you're leaving this building and going through Grover, which is the building you go through to get to registration and where a lot of the concurrent sessions will be tomorrow, we do have a gift bag from Visit Athens County that has the visitor's guide in it. And it also has the badge, the conference badge. So make sure you stop at the info table and pick one of those up. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the awards ceremony portion of the opening ceremony. And I got to control the slides. So let me get that taken care of before I try to do too much at once. Oops. Okay. Thank you. All right. So I'd like to welcome our MC for the 2023 ASA Appalachian Studies Association Awards, Mark Harshman. Mark just reminded me, I got out of order. I'm so sorry. I want to first, before now you all know who the MC is, I first want to welcome the president of the Appalachian Studies Association, Ricardo Nazario Colon, who's he's supposed to introduce Mark.
I was telling Mark, the audience doesn't know. Go with it. Go with it. You know, theater majors know that. It is my privilege to welcome you. Probably many of you don't know who I am, and I like it that way. I like to work behind the scenes and work with people to get things done. My leadership is not one to be in front of things. I am a transplant into Appalachia, and I love it. And I think that everybody who has come to the region loves it as well. I welcome you to the Appalachian Studies 46th Annual Conference, and to think that this started in the 1970s and it continues to go on. It is amazing. I want to highlight the committee, and I know that we've mentioned this before, but part of my job as the president is also to encourage and highlight the individuals that work with me to make the organization successful. So Michelle Maroney, Tiffany Arnold, Ann Bryant, Mary Thomas, our National Executive Director. I want to thank you all because you are the backbone who has made sure that this organization and the conference has functioned this past year. I want to highlight everybody who has been part of the planning committee, all the volunteers, all the leaders at Ohio University for lending us your space, the mayor, and the leaders of the county for allowing us to come and visit and spend our money in your town. I'm sure you'll like that. I also want to say that, I loved when we asked who's been to 12 or at least 12 conferences or 10 conferences, and only a few people stood up. Because that meant that we have a lot of young and new people engaging with the conference, and that is our future. And I was having an earlier conversation about being 50 and over, and saying that, some of us need to get out of the way and allow the next generation to guide their own future. And that is important. It is important that when we think about our future, that we're thinking about the future that we can leave to others, not to create a future for others that they may or may not want to live in. So I am encouraged by the number of young faces and new faces that have come here to engage in the conference. I met a few first-timers who are excited, so I hope we can deliver with this conference and to keep you coming back. Now, I told Michelle I was going to be here very brief. I fancy myself a poet, but the person that I'm going to welcome to the stage is truly a poet. He is the poet laureate of West Virginia. Mark Harshman has been doing great work in West Virginia and in the region for a long time. And I appreciate him being the MC for our award ceremony. He was appointed by former Governor Tomlin and has had a lot of work regarding poetry and children's book. And it is important for me to acknowledge him because I love people who work with our children and who want to help our children grow to be better human beings. So with that said, I want to welcome Mark Harshman to the microphone.
Thank you, Ricardo, very much. That was very kind. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the conference, and welcome especially to this evening's award ceremony. And special thanks to Michelle, Mary, and to so many others. The Appalachian Studies Association presents many awards at its annual conference, and the awards recognize a variety of individuals who contribute to Appalachian communities, scholarship, teaching, and activism. I look forward every year to celebrating the continued remarkable achievements of our fellow Appalachians. I like to think that here in our region we persevere in embodying the very best of America, that the rich traditions and culture of Appalachia demonstrate the open arms of welcome and inclusion that best emulate the ideals we hold most dear. And though I fear these same ideals are under attack today, I think we in Appalachia show a spirit of resistance and solidarity that will not only sustain us, but lead us forward to brighter days, both here and throughout the nation. And I sincerely believe that each of the individuals we celebrate this evening, whether posthumously or live in person, are emblematic of just such a spirit, just such warmth and devotion to the good of their neighbors, for we are a neighboring, bunch of folks, are we not? May we thrive, and I thank you. And now, as we always do, let us begin this evening by remembering in silence all those who have recently left us. Such losses, but such testimony to our spirit. I'd now like to invite to the stage Sandy Ballard and Pat Beaver to honor with a special memorial tribute the inimitable, indomitable, and illustrious Helen Lewis, who passed from us this past year.
I'm Sandy Ballard from Appalachian State University and editor of Appalachian Journal, and this is Pat Beaver, the founding director of App State's Center for Appalachian Studies, which she led for more than 20 years. With Judy Jennings, Pat edited the book Helen Matthews Lewis, Living Social Justice in Appalachia, and Pat often traveled with Helen, our mentor and our friend. We're here to celebrate the life of Helen Matthews Lewis, who died last year on September 4th.
We admire Helen's bold search for truth and her radical pedagogy. She pursued a life of social justice, challenging conventions and shaping the emerging field of Appalachian studies.
Helen was always teaching us outside of classrooms, inside them, in Southwest Virginia, at Clinch Valley College, now UVA's College at Wise, at East Tennessee State University, Berea College, Appalachian State, through educational films at Appleshop and community-based education projects at Highlander.
Helen's book, applying a colonial model to Appalachian coal fields, set the stage for new interpretations of mountain life, from music to politics, and helped spur regional action for social change. In the mid-1970s, Helen invited East Tennessean and Rhodes Scholar John Gaventa to her college sociology classes in Wise. Gaventa had videotaped striking coal miners in Wales and American miners at the Brookside strike in Harlan County. She traveled with him to research coal mining communities in South Wales and document daily life during the final decade of coal mining there.
The U.S. Department of Labor funded Helen's plan for a cultural exchange between Welsh miners and Appalachian coal miners in 1979, and Helen called Pat for help in touring the Welsh miners around the mountains. Pat had access to university vans.
That was my first trip with Helen. I became the van driver. And so began decades of journeys with Helen across Appalachia, Wales, France, and Southern Africa. Trips that have given me insights on social justice, global energy, water rights, and friendship.
In the 1980s, Helen worked with the community educators in Nicaragua, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and South Africa through the Highlander Center.
In the 1990s, Helen invited me with her return trip to Africa, where she was a consultant for the Kellogg Foundation's International Leadership Program. We danced and sang with a group that welcomed us to celebrate a new well, which meant women would no longer need to walk more than 2 miles to bring water to their villages.
Helen made more trips to Wales, along with more than 200 students and teachers from Appalachia. Thanks to Helen and others, the videotapes from the 1970s moved from the Highlander Center to ASU's Appalachian Collection Archives, where librarian Fred Hay and graduate students helped digitize the entire collection and provided the impetus for the documentary project After Coal by filmmaker Tom Hansel.
Helen Lewis graduated from Georgia State College for Women, then earned her master's degree from the University of Virginia, her PhD from University of Kentucky. She received honorary doctorates from Berea College and Wake Forest University. But more than the formal events, I remember Helen at the kitchen table, her hands and long fingers moving across the table, arranging invisible structures as she explained rural women's solidarity, United Kingdom labor politics, post-colonial regimes in Zimbabwe, and the potential for cider production from orchards on abandoned strip mines in Southwest Virginia. Always teaching, we miss those hands.
Many people here have Helen Lewis stories, and we fondly remember the profound effects of her teaching and her writing, her soft voice and her big questions, and the contributions and inspiration that she brought to Appalachian studies. She served us in all kinds of ways, including as ASA president.
And Helen wrote poetry. Quote, "At 94, she said, I got too old to sit down in front of bulldozers," end quote. So she wrote poems of protest. As we worked together on living social justice, Helen and I had the idea of creating a chapbook of her poems and my watercolors, a book published in 2018 by Iris Press called The Nature of Things, Poems and Flora of Protest. Helen thought she would die young like her parents, but I thought she would live forever.
Last fall, in 2022, Helen was lovingly laid to rest at her beloved river farm by her friends and neighbors and fellow travelers. We are bound together in love and respect for Helen Lewis and all the things she taught us.
She celebrated her birthdays in exotic places, including her 90th at Pawleys Island. We celebrate her contributions to Appalachian studies and to the world. She'd want us to keep community building and singing and dancing.
And now, in the spirit of celebrating another life we admire, this year's Helen Matthews Lewis Community Service Award recipient has people describing him as an exemplary embodiment of the values, commitments, and skills that Helen Lewis demonstrated during her lifetime. This year's award goes to one who is highly regarded as a successful community educator, activist, and writer who's devoted his life and considerable talents to helping better his Harlan County community and supporting its residents and the wider Appalachian region. I'm talking about Robert Guy. As Director of Appalachian Programming at Southeast Kentucky Community and Technical College, Robert has personified traditions fashioned by Helen Lewis, just as she famously used her sociological understandings and people skills to empower ordinary citizens to do unordinary things. Robert has used his artistic understanding and skills to empower his students and fellow citizens to do extraordinary things, especially in the long-term and enduring community arts projects that Robert's nurtured in 20 years of leading hundreds of Harlan Countyans to work as cast and crew and creator of now 8 Higher Ground productions. Higher Ground has transformed into a vibrant, mutually supportive, and entertaining community entity that creates thoughtful spaces addressing drug abuse, outmigration, the environment, race and gender discrimination, and many other topics that are related to fear and hard times and hope. And we can't fail to mention Robert's brilliant, funny, heartbreaking, and heartwarming fiction writing and illustrations. Helen did not only engage in community service as a scholar, she also wrote prolifically and persuasively and poetically, and Robert does the same. His 3 novels present views of Appalachia and its people that challenge common misunderstandings of the region and command a reprisal and a renewed appreciation of our collective regional story. Robert's certainly not alone in bridging gaps between arts and activism, between community and service, but he looks at injustice and he knows how to bring the joy. He's a significant force in doing this today. We're happy to recognize him with the Helen Lewis Community Service Award.
I don't know. Is he here?
Yeah, he's right there.
Is he coming? Yeah. There's no problem. I don't know if everybody will get a standing ovation like you guys. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Pat. Congratulations, Robert. And now, as we move on to the rest of the awards, let me add that I've been asked to say we request that the awards recipients not give an acceptance speech after receiving their award. In return, we promise to give you a boisterous applause. Do we not? Yes? Okay. So let us begin with the rest of the ceremonies. Our first award, or next, is the Wilma Dykeman Faces of Appalachia Postdoctoral Fellowship Award. To present the award is Michelle Maroney.
This fellowship honors Wilma Dykeman Stokely, whose nonfiction novels chronicle the people and land of East Tennessee. Founded in 2008 with funding from the National Endowment for the Humanities and the Appalachian Studies Association, the Dykeman Fellowship promotes and supports scholarship on gender, including gender identity, sexualities, as well as race and or ethnicity in Appalachia. This year, the award goes to Dr. Jason Van Fossen. Are you here? He earned his PhD in English literature from Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, and since 2018, he's held an appointment as an English department as at the rank of assistant professor with Westchester University. His project will seek to recover queer Appalachian depictions in celebrated queer youth literature that have been otherwise marginalized or erased. By studying queer Appalachian youth literature, this project meaningfully brings together 2 fields that have been previously viewed as separate and creates a new line of further inquiry for future researchers and educators with a vested interest in authentic and accurate representations of queer Appalachian lives.
Might as well stay up. Our next award is the Carl A. Ross Student Paper Award. To present both the undergraduate and graduate award, I welcome back Michelle Maroney.
The undergraduate award this year goes to Courtney C. Martin from the University of Kentucky. Is Courtney here? Come on up, Courtney. Courtney's paper is Piloting an Oral History Approach to Investigating Appalachian Kentuckians' Cancer Perspectives. The graduate student paper award is Beth Nardella. Is Beth here? From West Virginia University. And Beth's paper is Healthcare as Resistance, One Community's Path to Sustainability Through Health and Wellness.
Our next award is the E. Appalachia Award. The E. Appalachia Award is given in recognition of an outstanding media source that provides insight on Appalachia and its people, or provides a vital community service to Appalachians. To present the award is Sofia Enriquez, the committee chair.
I'd like to thank my colleague Cicero Fain for his collaboration in reviewing and judging this year's submissions, of which there were many. We had about 9 submissions this year, all of which are doing important work to tell more complete stories, provide critical insights, and create digital resources, repositories, and archives of Appalachian life and culture. And I'm happy to say that this year's E. Appalachia Award recipient is Black by God, the West Virginian. So, if Crystal Good is in the house and can make her way up here. Founded in 2020, yes, founded in 2020 by Appalachian poet, performer, and publisher Crystal Good, Black by God is dedicated to telling Black stories from the Mountain State while also bridging the news gap in an increasingly polarized and misleading regional news context. The name Black by God was inspired by the expression West by God, Virginia. I went to WVU, if you can't tell. A phrase whose origins are unknown, but which has been used to represent the state and its people. Black by God leverages a multimedia platform that prioritizes web and social media with a print publication, SMS alerts, and events to make our news more accessible. If you know Crystal, you know how dedicated she is to this work, lugging copies of Black by God literally around the state, showing up to political events and community gatherings to uplift and advocate for Black voices in Appalachia. But you also know that she is a talented writer, an organizer of things, a connector of people, and a fierce, fierce friend. So as you go home, make sure you visit blackbygod.org or give Crystal a shout in person. And she is an incredible person doing incredible work, and we are so lucky to have her. So.
Our next award is the Jack Spadaro Documentary Award. The Spadaro Award recognizes the year's best film, video, radio, television, or other media presentation on Appalachia or its people. Presenting this award is Tom Hansel, committee chair. Tom will present both the finalist and the winner.
Yeah, thank you. This year was a very competitive year for the Jack Spadaro Documentary Award, probably had the record number of applications. So I'd like to start by recognizing the finalist for the award, which is a Cherokee-produced and directed film, which is a beautiful encapsulation of important traditions, beliefs, and loves of our mountains. It's Gudiyada, or What They've Been Taught, by Britt Hensel. Yeah. Before we go on to the winner, I also wanted to remind you, if you want to check out this film, which is a 9-minute documentary, Google the Reciprocity Project. Really fascinating project of all indigenous produced films, all available for free on the internet, and definitely look for Gudiyada or What They've Been Taught. So for the winning film, the judges commented that it is an exceptionally strong portrait of a grassroots approach to address the issue of mass incarceration in Appalachia. From the innovative animation, which enables us to imagine which cannot be filmed inside the prisons, to the inclusive structure of storytelling that makes this more than one family story, this film does important work. So the Jack Spadaro Documentary Award goes to Calls from Home by director Sylvia Ryerson.
It's hard not to share in the joy, right? So, the next award is the Stephen L. Fisher Award for Excellence in Teaching. The award recognizes individuals dedicated to intellectual rigor and pedagogical integrity in constructing and delivering inclusive knowledge about Appalachia and its people. There is both a K-12 award and a post-secondary award. Zachary Green will be presenting the K-12 award.
The K-12 Fisher Award for Excellence in Teaching goes to Kayla White. Is Kayla here? Hey, there she is. Everybody give her a round of applause. Kayla has been an educator for 13 years, and in that time, she has made an enormous impact on her students, her community, and our region. As a teacher, she also filled the role of counselor, organizer, and to quote a recommender, a mom to many. Kayla is described as embodying the family and community values of Appalachia, sharing her life with her students, and living out an example of what it means to be a part of a family. She uses literature to help her students realize that they are already a part of a living, unique, and vibrant culture. This work is critical in reaching and promoting Appalachian students to have strong sense of place and belonging that roots them as they grow out into the broader world. Taking great intention in learning how her learners learn, Mrs. White weaves a thread that runs so true, the concept of home, into her practice. I will share a quote from one of Kayla's former students. As I look back now, I realize I did it. I defied the odds. As I type this, over 10 years since writing that letter to myself that Kayla had them write when they were starting high school, I've achieved each thing I set forth to do, with Kayla in my corner as a teacher, friend, and now colleague. She turned me into someone proud of my Appalachian roots, proud of the statistics I did not become a part of, proud of where I'm going, and proud of the things I overcame to be where I am today. Kayla White.
And presenting the post-secondary award of the Stephen L. Fisher Award for Excellence in Teaching will be Catherine Engel.
It is my pleasure and honor to announce the post-secondary winner of the Stephen L. Fisher Award for Excellence in Teaching, Dr. Shauna Scott. Dr. Scott, a native of Eastern Kentucky, joined the University of Kentucky as a faculty member in the Department of Sociology in 1990. She earned her MA and PhD in anthropology at the University of California, Berkeley, after graduating from the UK Honors Program with a double major in political science and anthropology and a minor in Appalachian Studies. During her 33-year career at UK, she has served as the Director of Appalachian Studies, President of the Appalachian Studies Association, and editor of the Journal of Appalachian Studies. In 2015, the UK College of Arts and Sciences recognized her as a distinguished faculty for community engagement/service. In 2022, she was named Outstanding Faculty Instructor in the college. And with her editorial colleagues, Chad Berry and Phil Obermiller, Dr. Scott won the Weatherford Award for Nonfiction for their 2015 book entitled Studying Appalachian Studies, Making the Road by Walking. I've benefited directly from Dr. Scott's guidance, mentorship, and teaching, as she has served as my teacher, TA supervisor, and chair of my dissertation committee, and most recently co-editor on our volume Towards Just Transitions, Regenerative Futures for Appalachian Communities. I can tell you with certainty, Dr. Scott exemplifies what it means to be a teacher, mentor, advocate, and citizen in and of the region. She comes from a family of Appalachian teachers. Her paternal grandfather, maternal grandmother, great aunt, uncle, first cousin, and husband have all been school teachers in Appalachia. Shauna has taught thousands of students in both sociology and Appalachian studies over the decades. Teaching at an R1 research institution, Shauna has left an impact not only on undergraduates, but also graduate students. Her list of past advisees is notable, as she has guided the next generation of teachers and researchers in the region. She has been central in advancing Appalachian studies pedagogy and practice. Her classes, including Intro to Appalachian Studies, Public Sociology, and Sociology of Appalachia, have used participatory and place-based methods to involve her students in real-life issues in the region. I saw this firsthand in Elkhorn City and the work around tourism, recreation, and economic development when I was serving as her TA. She's also done extensive work with students around the coal waste disaster in Martin County, Kentucky. I wanted to share a few insights from her nomination packet. Fellow Fisher Award winner, Dr. Dwight Billings shares, "I know no one who is more effective than Shauna in getting students engaged and excited about on-site learning." Her colleague and collaborator at EKU, Dr. Steph McSpirit, writes, "Through Dr. Scott's classes, students have had real opportunities to gain real experiences in community-based participatory research practices and learn firsthand teamwork and their ethical responsibilities to produce sound research on behalf of Appalachian communities and the Appalachian region." Graduate student Amy Imlay writes, "Dr. Scott inspired me to consider Appalachia not from a place of lacking, rather a place of abundance with a vibrant community where people eagerly work towards the future." Former environmental sociology student Brock Mead recounted attending the Isle of Mountains Day in Frankfurt during Dr. Scott's class, and at her encouragement, attending Mountain Justice Spring Break, where he witnessed and learned about MTR. He shared, "I was so moved by the devastation that I've committed my life to environmental and labor activism and organizing." From former student Jordan Jones, who was a part of Dr. Scott's class that explored water issues and lobbied in Frankfurt, writes, "Dr. Scott, without a doubt, was the most influential and excellent professor I had during the entirety of my studies at UK." And lastly, Introduction to Appalachian Studies students Alexandra Burns recounted, "APP 200 helped me with my Appalachian roots and made me feel like I didn't have to code switch and I wasn't less than due to where I was from. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Scott."
Our next award is the Credus D. Williams James S. Brown Service Award, given to an individual who has made exemplary contributions to Appalachia, the Appalachian Studies Association, and/or Appalachian Studies. There was no winner selected this year. The Gates Carolyn Artist Award honors activist filmmaker Bob Gates and activist musicians Guy and Candy Carolyn. The late Bob Gates was an award-winning photographer and independent filmmaker whose work explored environmental and cultural topics in West Virginia's coal region. Folk singers and activists Guy and Candy Carolyn have dedicated their lives to social justice since the Civil Rights Movement and continue their work in the struggle for peace at the Highlander Center in Newmarket, Tennessee. The Gates Carolyn Artist Award also did not have a winner selected for 2023. Our next award is the Appalachian Foodways Practitioner Fellowships that honor, celebrate, and support foodways tradition bearers and practitioners in Central Appalachia who have made significant and long-term contributions to sustaining and supporting the foodways heritage of their respective communities. Fellows may include, but are not limited to, home cooks and bakers, seed savers, farmers, community elders, keepers of recipes, and traditional foodways knowledge, hunters and foragers. The 2023 Appalachian Foodways Fellowships are a partnership between Grow Appalachia, the Appalachian Studies Association, and the Mid-Atlantic Arts Central Appalachia Living Traditions Program. The presenter for the Appalachian Foodways Practitioner Fellowships is Candace Mullins.
Hello. It's such an honor to be here today and for Grow Appalachia to be able to host the second year of the Appalachian Foodways Practitioner Fellowships. It was a really competitive process this year. We were actually a little underprepared for how popular the fellowship would be. I would say that we had 10 times the applications that we were able to award. So huge honor to be able to celebrate all three fellows today. We have two in person who are going to join us here, and then we have one that I will read about who is not able to be here with us today. And I would love for fellows to come to the stage, on the stage with me whenever I share the award with you, and I've got them hidden under here. These awards are actually handmade wooden boxes by Berea College students from Berea College Student Craft. So our first fellow this year is Famika Elliott. Famika Elliott is the founder of the Rooted East Collective. She is a food educator, home gardener, and herbalist. She is a Knoxville native by the way of Louisiana, as her Creole ancestry often influences her practice. Famika is skilled in public service and resource allocation with nearly 10 years experience focusing on substance abuse, mental health, child welfare, and juvenile justice sector. In 2019, she founded Meek Meals, which is a health foods brand, and has continued to pivot in the entrepreneurial scene to address major health crises within the Black community, such as mental health, postpartum, medical, and food apartheid. She is also the founder of the Lotus Program Experience, which is a full-spectrum wellness program for women experiencing infertility, pregnancy, birth, and loss. Famika, will you join me? Our next fellow is Jason B. Tart Sr. Jason B. Tart Sr. is an entrepreneur, a farmer, business owner, and community servant, most passionate about exposing the fortune Appalachia possesses to enrich our communities, families, and build sustainable business opportunities for future generations. Jason is originally from Val's Creek community in McDowell County, West Virginia, and he has been an ambassador for change, co-founding Economic Development Greater East, which is known as EDGE, and several other organizations to identify economic drivers and develop models around food and agriculture, clean energy, tourism, and community health. Jason, will you join me? And finally, our fellow who was not able to join us today, Sergio Herrera. Sergio Herrera makes Chilean beef empanadas and traditional Chilean meals. His work is rooted in his past, going all the way back to his childhood when his grandmother would cook traditional foods to sell in their neighborhood in Chile. Sergio currently dedicates himself to making empanadas de pino, or beef empanadas, one of the most typical dishes in his country. His foodways tradition has been popular among residents of Mifflin and surrounding counties in Pennsylvania, and especially Chilean residents residing in the area. So we celebrate him from afar. Thank you.
Our next set of awards are the Weatherford Awards. The ASA and Berea College Weatherford Awards honor published works that best illumine the challenges, personalities, and unique qualities of the Appalachian South. Presenting the Weatherford Award for Poetry that honors the life and work of Dr. Grace Tony Edwards is Ansel Elkins, the Poetry Chair. Or perhaps not. Hi, Silas.
Hello, I'm Silas House. I'm the Chair of Appalachian Studies at Berea College. And before I present the award, I have to hold up the name of Ron Houchin. He was a dear friend to many of us, and he passed away in May of 2022. He won the Weatherford Award for Poetry in 2011 and was a beloved member of the Appalachian literature community. This year's Weatherford in Poetry was judged by Ansel Elkins and Susan Parker Weatherford, Felicia Mitchell, Annalena Phillips, Matthew Wimberly, and Marianne Worthington. The second runner-up this year was Melva Supreti for her book, This Tillable Land. The first runner-up was Lucien Darjun Meadows for his collection, In the Hands of the River. Of the winner of this year's award, one judge said the author has written a timely and important book, not only for Appalachian studies, but for the American conversation. Another says that the writer has emerged as one of our very best poets with the arrival of this book, and I couldn't agree more. The winner of this year's Weatherford Award in Poetry is Annie Woodford for her remarkable collection. Where You Come From is gone. I hope y'all will read it.
Presenting the Weatherford Award for Fiction is Jason Howard, the Fiction Chair.
It's wonderful to be here and to see all your good faces. I also wanted to hold up another name, one of our finest songwriters, Naomi Judd, who told me once that she had a dynastic awareness of the land that was rooted in matriarchy. And I think that that really made its way into the songs that she wrote and into the harmonies that she and Winona sang all around the world representing Appalachia. I'm Jason Kyle Howard. I'm the non-voting chair of the Weatherford and Fiction Committee. And I first want to thank our judges, Catherine Scott Crawford, Michael Crowley, Monique Ducton, Leah Hampton, and Natalie Seipold, all of whom are extraordinarily gifted fiction writers. And so I'm particularly grateful that they lent their craft expertise to judging this award. This year we had a phenomenally strong selection of nominees that our judges carefully considered. And I'm proud to announce our two finalists first. Ashley Blooms for her novel, Where I Can't Follow, and Patricia L. Hudson for her novel, Traces. And this year's, yes, we can give them a hand. And this year's fiction winner is Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. Our judges concluded, Demon Copperhead reimagines a classic with a stirring voice, inflected with the rhythms of modern Appalachia, and a story that stretches far beyond the mountains to tell the story of America in the 21st century, a place rocked by inequality and addiction. And as a former student of Dr. Ron Eller, that reminds me, his voice is ringing in my ears, that Appalachia is a microcosm of America, yes. Barbara couldn't join us this evening, but she asked me to express her gratitude and appreciation with these words. This is such heartwarming news, a huge honor that makes me happy for all the real demons who need to be seen and heard. I'm always gratified, of course, for my books to be read far and wide, but when my ode to my own people is embraced by them, I feel I've truly done my job. Thank you.
And presenting the Weatherford Award for Nonfiction is Chris Green, the Nonfiction Chair. Chris.
First, I want to say for all you youngins out there, all you undergrads, Shauna was my teacher in her first year at UK, so just follow in the footsteps. Our judges for this were myself, Catherine Newfont, Becky Fletcher, Wilburn Hayden, and Jeffrey Keith. They had to troll through a giant stack of worthy books. And it was very difficult for us to choose even our runner-ups. But our three runner-ups are Emily Hilliard's Making the Future, Visionary Folklore and Everyday Culture in Appalachia. Nima Ashiva, Another Appalachia, and John, hooray. And John M. Cogshell, Something in These Hills. Now, our winner of the award grew up in North and Central Georgia and went on to meld his parents' careers as librarian and environmental protection. Since that time, he's been teaching history and cultures in northern Appalachia since 2005, and he and his brother began doing what they cared about, which was understanding and nurturing the human ecological relations. In their website, you might be interested in looking at, called thesouthernhighlander.org. Of the winning book, and we can go ahead and move to the winning book. There we go. One of our judges, Catherine Newfont, writes, "This is a remarkable, even transformational work of Appalachian history. Through painstaking research and 19th century awards, Magnet reveals a world we had previously barely glimpsed, one that tied thousands of Appalachian people to global markets while also enabling them a significant control over their terms of their own labor. Appalachian communities' ties to forest, both culturally and economically, predate extractive industry and are now reemerging as coal and other industries increasingly abandon the region. At this pivotal moment, Magnet offers a brilliant exploration of ginseng, a forest product long used to sustain Appalachian livelihoods. This is truly a usable past indeed." He's not here.
So, on behalf of the Appalachian Studies Association, I want to congratulate all the winners and the nominees. A special thank you also goes out to all the award committee chairs, as well as the award committee members for their work in making the final selections. And that's a lot of hard work. Hats off to them. Special thanks to Mary Thomas, again to Mary Thomas and Ann Bryant for handling the administrative tasks associated with the award ceremony. And so, please join us at the West End Cider House for the ASA signature cocktail to the hills, followed by a meet and greet with the ASA Steering Committee. Have a great evening. May we all thrive, yes? And please enjoy the rest of this magnificent conference. Thank you very much.